All right, Ivan J has a question. My heart is hardened, Ivan says. I'm backslidden, a carnal Christian, whatever you want to call it. I'm so far from God right now. I want to love him, but I don't. I'm afraid of hell. What can I do to heal? Ivan, I'm going to offer you several, thoughts on this. First off, if you were completely hardened, I really don't think you would have shared this comment. I don't think you would have put this question up there and said, hey, can you help me? I don't think that would have happened if you were really that hard, if you were just solidified, totally hardened in that sense. But I feel for you, and I understand what you're going through. James, in the book of James, it talks about weeping and wailing and mourning, and let your laughter be turned to mourning, right? Your joy to gloom. That there's this idea that I stop making light of my sin issues. And now you might say, well, my heart isn't like, I just look at my heart. Hey, would you cry already? Would you be upset? Would you be bothered? And that isn't happening. So here's where in my own life, very practically, this has helped me, is when I pray that God would break me over my sin. Lord, soften my heart. And this would be a prayer I encourage you to pray. God, soften my heart. Open me up to see how bad my sin is. Help me just pull the calluses off of my eyes so that I can see the problems with my sin, so that I can turn from it rightly, so that I can look at it clearly. Also, obviously, you turn from the sin in your practice, because the more you move away from those sins, the more you'll have new perspective, right? You'll see it for what it was. An example of this, maybe in a good way, a bad example of this, is when I'm cooking in the house, and then I leave the house for a little while and come back. I smell all the smells, right? Like I'm like, oh man, it smells good in here. But I was desensitized because I was right there. And we're like that with smells in general, right? So with sin, you can't feel how bad it is. You can't smell how bad it is because you're still in it. As you move away from it, your heart will become softer to it. You will get new perspective, and you will have that right attitude towards it. And so finally, what I'll suggest is radical life change. Radical life change. Don't do little tiny adjustments. Oh, I'll try not to do that. I'll try not to do that. Radical life change, where Jesus says, like, hey, if your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Now, I have a whole study I'd recommend you listen to on that. You're not supposed to literally gouge out your eye or cut off your hand. No one in the New Testament church did that. Jesus is very clearly speaking hyperbolically, but this is what I mean. I'm taking that verse to say, hey, radical response to sin. If there's a relationship that is just steeped in sin, cut it off, or radically change the way that relationship functions. And whatever it is, whatever the thing is that you're doing that is like the baby steps of compromise in your life, cut those things off. Cut those things off. And as you do that, you will find your own heart renewed. Read the word, whether you feel like it or not. Pray, whether you get some great benefit in prayer, some emotional benefit or not. Worship God, whether you have a sense that this is like a wonderful thing or not. You just do the right things. Because, and I love this analogy, I share it a lot. If you think of yourself as a train, your heart, that you're talking about, your hard-heartedness, that sort of thing, that's the caboose of the train, right? Faith needs to be the thing that drives the train. Faith and choices you make. And when a train is going down the wrong path, it'll make a turn to go down the right path. In this case, you turning from those sin issues, Ivan, and refocusing your life on Christ and being radical in your obedience to Jesus, you'll make that turn. Your heart probably will not make the turn right away. It's the caboose. Trains can be very long. And so you could be going the right way for a while before finally your heart makes the turn too, and you start to feel refreshed and you start to feel clear-minded and your heart starts to become sensitive again. So make the right choices. Don't focus on your heart. Focus on obedience to Christ in faith and wait for your heart to come around.